Shabbat Shalom. Happy New Year. I hope these first days of 2023 have been good ones, full of all the things that bring you joy and fulfillment. I hope too that the days ahead bring with them all manner of opportunities for growth and change and discovery. The new year is a moment ripe for exploration. So many of us find ourselves in search of new beginnings and meaningful ways to make our lives and the lives of those around us better. It's no coincidence, really. We watch the calendar click ahead one year, and we are reminded of time's ceaseless march, and that our sojourn on this earth is not infinite. And so a sense of urgency creeps in, pushing us to consider the changes and the challenges we've long pondered. It's time, that inner voice declares to us. If not now, when? This week, right on time, the New York Times unveiled a series of articles called the 7-Day Happiness Challenge, their answer to the common New Year's yearning for improvement and change. While the title is somewhat trite, the articles are absolutely fascinating, based on research produced by the Harvard Study of Adult Development. This study, launched 85 years ago, set out to answer what were then a radical set of questions. What makes a good life? And what makes people thrive? Journalist Michael Miller explains the initial researchers enlisted hundreds of participants who agreed to a wide range of interviews, questionnaires, physicals, and extensive physiological measurements. And in spite of many obstacles, they kept collecting data year after year, decade after decade. Reporter Jancy Dunn adds, now, 85 years later, the Harvard Study of Adult Development has expanded to 3 generations and more than 1,300 descendants of the original subjects. It is, according to the researchers, the longest-running in-depth study on human happiness in the world. So, what makes for a genuinely happy, thriving life, according to the study? As an aside, please note that happiness is used here to mean a state of deep well-being. A happy life is not a life without challenge or struggle, and that claim is borne out again and again in the research. Now, given all the data over these 8+ decades, one element kept emerging as the determining factor for a happy, good life. Relationships, relationships, relationships. According to doctors Bob Waldinger and Mark Schultz, authors of the upcoming book, The Good Life, and director and associate director of the Harvard study, respectively, good relationships are significant enough that if we had to take all 85 years of the Harvard study and boil it down to a single principle for living, it would be this: good relationships keep us healthier and happier, period. As reporter Jancy Dunn underscores, more than wealth, more than IQ or social class, it is the robustness of our bonds that most determines whether we feel fulfilled. It doesn't matter how old you are or how young. It doesn't matter if you're single or you're married, if you're a parent or you're child-free. If you're going to do one thing this year to ensure your own health and happiness, find the time to nurture and develop relationships. Relationships, of course, include partners, friends, and family members. Nurturing these connections is critical. But these aren't the only bonds that are important to living a fulfilling life. It's also the connections made within community groups and connections with folks you meet at places like Temple Emanu-El. It's connections with colleagues and coworkers, and believe it or not, it is important to cultivate connections with what they call casual acquaintances. Your neighbors, your door attendants, your mail carriers, your local dry cleaners or shopkeepers. Offering pleasantries to someone on the bus or subway, chatting up a fellow city dweller on the sidewalk, or making polite conversation at the coffee shop, all of these interactions make a difference. Notes Dr. Waldinger, brief but warm exchanges have a direct effect on happiness. Alicia Ali, an associate professor of applied psychology at NYU, shares, even the most fleeting connection can have an impact. It doesn't need to be something that appears deep for it to be deeply felt. This landmark study proves what Judaism has claimed for millennia. Cultivating relationships lies at the heart of the human experience. One of the foundational teachings of Judaism comes from our creation story, when God looks at Adam and says, "It's not good for humankind to be alone." We are a people who thrives in relationship, and we are a people who has survived by dint of those relationships. When our relationships are strong, we stave off loneliness and isolation. We feel strengthened and supported. Our bonds over space and time have kept us, our tradition, our texts, and our heritage alive. Dr. Ron Wolfson, scholar and author of the book Relational Judaism, writes, "After more than 40 years of living and teaching the Jewish way, I have come to an understanding about the essence of Judaism. It's all about relationships. Call it what you will, a religion, a civilization, a way of life. Judaism is built on relationships. In the end, the purpose of Judaism is to love the other and the divine other. When you do, you find meaning, you find purpose, you find belonging, and you find blessing. It's all about relationships." As we gather tonight, it feels so appropriate that our Torah portion is Vayechi, the very last book, the very last portion in the book of Genesis. This portion, as it so happens, hinges on the notion of relationship. We are at the end of the Joseph story, a story which, as many of you know, is filled with fractiousness and jealousy between the brothers who sell Joseph into slavery. And while it is also a story of forgiveness and redemption, recall that Joseph forgives his brothers and cares for them in Egypt, there is a lingering sense of concern regarding Joseph and his true feelings towards his brothers. After their father, Jacob, dies, the brothers worriedly ask, "What if Joseph still bears a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrong we did to him?" But Joseph has had enough strife. With kindness, he reassures his brothers that he is no longer angry. And the story ends with a sense that their bond is strong and will remain so. That the brothers could rebuild and repair their relationship is essential to the narrative of the Torah, but also to the greater narrative of humanity. In this story, there is hope that loathing can someday turn to love and animosity into deep affection. Writes Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory, the episode is moving in and of itself, but it also resolves one of the central questions of the book of Genesis. Can brothers live peaceably with one another? The question is fundamental to the biblical drama of redemption, for if brothers cannot live together, how can nations? And if nations cannot live together, how can the human world survive? Only now, with the reconciliation of Joseph and his brothers, can the story move on to the birth of Israel as a nation, passing from slavery to freedom. In the end, Joseph and his brothers prioritized their relationship above any residual feeling of bitterness or resentment. Over time, they recognized that the strength of their fraternal bond superseded all the rest. In their book, The Good Life, Doctors Waldinger and Schultz offer this piece of advice. If you're going to make one choice, that single decision that could best ensure your own health and happiness, science tells us that your choice should be to cultivate warm relationships. In this moment of New Year's reflection and resolution, as we think about how we can do better and be better and feel better and live better, let us remember that a good life, a meaningful life, and as it turns out, a happy life begins and ends with meaningful relationship. Therefore, on this Shabbat, the first of 2023, may we appreciate the sanctity of our relationships, recognizing that they not only bring joy to our lives, but they enhance our well-being too. May we eagerly embrace new friendships and intentionally spark new connections with people we meet in all areas of our lives. May we savor spontaneous conversations and remember how meaningful a single hello can be, whether to our neighbors or our building staff, the taxi driver, or maybe the person standing in line behind you at the grocery store. Every hello matters. And finally, may we always remember that meaningful relationships not only build community, but can change the way we view the world and our place in it. They can help us see that we belong. They can help us find a purpose, and they can help us discover the blessings of mutuality and reciprocity and shared love. If that isn't a recipe for a good life and a good year, I don't know what is. Wishing you all a happy, healthy, relationship-filled new year. Amen.